In the debate over transgender ideology, you might hear that nobody's wanting to, the things happening to children aren't happening to children. Nobody's, doing surgeries or doing the hormone therapy. Oh, that's just not true. It is happening. And it's happening to the level that new terms are appearing called gender-affirming care. And it's a pretty contentious issue, and you're seeing this play out across the country. I had somebody share with me an internal message from a state agency here in Illinois with a virtual presentation coming up, dispelling myths around gender-affirming care for youth. It's an event, a WebEx presentation, Q&A. It's going to be happening later this month. I'm going to do some more reporting on this and get this story out a bit more. But looking elsewhere, when it comes to the issue of, quote, gender-affirming care, what does that mean? And while you have this debate with people that say, if you oppose this, you're homophobic, I don't know if that's the motive of people opposing gender-affirming care for youth. I think they're more opposing the idea of allowing children to have certain procedures that might block puberty or even surgical procedures to manipulate their body in various ways, be it, their genitalia or elsewhere. And these are questions being raised about children getting these procedures. But if you have that debate with some people, they'll just brush it off. Oh, that's not happening to children like you think it's happening. Well, I think it's rising to the level where you've got states like Washington State that have enacted a measure called, supporting youth and young adults seeking protected healthcare services. And my colleagues from Washington State reported this out. The Washington House passed a bill allowing shelters to keep runaway juveniles from their parents to get an abortion and or gender surgeries that include removing a girl's breast or uterus. So these obviously are things that are happening across the country. And in California, they recently had a debate about a measure that deals with parents. And I want to jump into some of this debate, and we'll definitely get to your phone calls, I promise, at 217-629-7970. Again, that's the phone number, 217-629-7970. But this is some of the debate that happened in California on a measure that would require a parent affirm their child's gender identity or risk losing custody of their child. Let me repeat that. The bill would require a parent affirm their child's gender identity or else risk losing custody of that child. Here is a proponent of that bill in California talking about this measure. Let's go ahead and hear some of this debate.
Many TGI children are not safe in their own homes because of a non-conforming or abusive caretaker. This leads many TGI youth to run away from home, leaving them vulnerable to housing, instability, exploitation, and abuse. Research demonstrates that family acceptance of LGBTQ+ youth is a crucial protective factor. Crucial protective factor in combating depression and substance abuse. Well-rounded social support from friends and family members is strongly associated with the positive mental development, physical health, and overall well-being. AB 957 would center the health and welfare of TGI youth by acknowledging that affirmation of their gender identity is in their best interests.
So again, a sponsor of that legislation sounding off and proposing this to essentially have parents accept the gender identity of their children or else face some severe consequences. More on this.
Affirmation is not binary, just like health, safety, and welfare is not binary. Family courts and judges are looking at the whole picture. If both parents are accepting of their child's gender identity, this issue will not be the thing that tips scale towards any parent. Affirmation of gender identity looks different for each individual, but the primary modality of gender affirmation is family acceptance and social support.
So more from this, you've got the ongoing debate in California on this bill, and let's hear from one of the opponents that says that this idea of gender affirmation, it's raising concerns about normalizing gender dysphoria. Here's an opponent to this measure in California.
The issue is, though, other countries around the world are beginning to question this. The UK, in fact, did a comprehensive review of gender-affirming care, and they described the social transition as an active intervention with significant effects on child or young persons in terms of their psychological functioning, and emphasized that it is not a neutral act and better information is needed about outcomes. The systemic review found the evidence on managing gender incongruence inconclusive due to lack of long-term data. Similarly, Sweden, Finland, and Norway have since rejected gender affirmative care for children. Now, I don't know which side of it is correct. I'm just saying I'm new to the issue, and I understand what Senator Laird said in clarifying what this bill does, but the elevation of the issue accepts gender affirmation care as an accomplished science and accepts gender affirmation as the appropriate approach by a parent. And my concern is, given the conclusions of the UK and those three Scandinavian countries, not exactly restrictive type societies, I have concerns about making the conclusion that this bill does, bringing it into a custody dispute.
Let's go ahead and get to your phone calls at 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Morning, Bishop.
Hey.
What kind of world do we live in where you have to be 18 years old to get a tattoo or a body piercing, but you can be 12 years old and cut off your wanker? Seriously, what in the hell is going on in this country?
Well, and in California, apparently they are going to tell a parent, if you don't affirm what that child wants, then you could lose custody of that child.
I am just absolutely mind blown. If a guy walks into a doctor on a Monday and says, "Hey, doc, will you cut my finger off?" the doctor's going to look at him and go, "Dude, you're crazy."
But listen, there are people that do. There's some guy who tattooed all the heck. He even cut his nose off and split his tongue, and I think he cut off 2 of his fingers because he thinks he's a demon. So adults are doing that, and I guess, you know what, if an adult wants to do that and can find a doctor that's willing to do that, more power to him. But the issue here is about children. And children especially going through puberty, for instance. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, good morning, Greg. My issue with this is minors cannot consent. There's 2 sides of this issue. One side thinks that minors do not have the ability to consent. The other side apparently thinks they do have the right to consent at an early age. Now, I'm just going to bring up one example. Jazz from California, individual, a young boy, that transitioned at a young age, and they started on puberty blockers and eventually did the full transition. Because they were on the hormone block, because Jazz was on the hormone blocker at such a young age, she did not develop the penile tissue in order to have a successful surgery. Now Jazz cannot have any sexual pleasure, is refusing to dilate, and is having severe issues with the transition. So if we accept the idea that puberty blockers or hormone blockers is the way to go, in the future, the adult developmental stage is extremely affected. Yeah. There is no studies that I'm aware of that show the effectiveness in the gender transitions, and to try to make this a legal law where parents trying to do the best for their children and make them go to the age of 18 to make this decision are now going to be punished. We're entering crazy land. Thanks for the call, Greg.
Appreciate it. And I will get some more of your calls, I promise, but I got to take a break. It is Springfield's Morning News. Get those calls lined up. 217-629-7970. We've got a few more minutes here for your phone calls at 217-629-7970, but I'd also like to continue reviewing some of the debates about a California measure that would essentially strip the custody of a parent if they don't conform with what their child says is their gender identity. And what new term we're all hearing about, gender-affirming care. So let's get back over to Twitter, where they've got the debate, and here is a witness in favor of the bill to affirm a child's gender identity. But the bill that they're debating doesn't say whether it's male, female, or non-binary, or any of the neo-pronouns that there may be. So here's a supporter of this measure testifying in front of the California legislature.
My name is Melissa Thomas. My pronouns are they, them. I'm an attorney and a Solis Policy Institute State Fellow. The Women's Foundation of California is a proud co-sponsor of AB 957, the Trans, Gender Diverse, and Intersex, or TGI, Youth Empowerment Act. Nearly 1 in 5 trans and non-binary youth attempted suicide last year. But LGBTQ+ youth who felt a high rate of social support from their families attempted suicide at less than half the rate of those who felt less social support. We could cut suicide attempts by TGI children in half simply by empowering parents to support their children.
So that's the kind of idea there of the supporters, but you've got others who are saying that if families and parents want to protect their children, they might want to, quote, flee California. Here's a state senator in California sounding off on that issue as well.
I'm now in year 11 in the state legislature, and all the time we're proposing policies to protect children. Well, after 11 years, I've come to a conclusion that we need to start protecting parents. That's just not happening. I've been here and witnessed a full frontal assault on charter schools, taking away parents' choice and how their children are going to be educated, to the detriment particularly of children of color. In recent years, we have put government bureaucrats between parents, children, and doctors when it comes to medical care. And now we have this, where if a parent does not support the ideology of the government, they're going to be taken away from the home.
That's, again, the idea of this bill is to say if a parent doesn't conform with a child's gender identity, if they don't go forward with, quote, gender-affirming care, they could lose custody of their child. Is this something that could be coming to Illinois? Good morning. You're on WMAY.
It's almost like when parents interact and support their children, they're happier and less likely to commit suicide. That doesn't mean that they have to transform into something that they're not. Any parent that uses puberty-blocking drugs on their child is guilty of child abuse. It's no different than malnourishing them. You're stopping the body from growing and becoming what it was biologically designed to do. It is child abuse, and these people are sick. This would have been a conspiracy theory years ago. People were saying that they're coming for your kids, they're coming for this movement's going to take over. And it's out of doorsteps now, and it's almost too late to start fighting back. Because
it's not only on the doorstep, it's inside the house of Washington State and now in California as well. We'll see what happens here in Illinois. Again, I got a message from someone saying that there's a virtual presentation by a state agency here in Illinois dispelling myths around gender-affirming care for youth, but some people say that's not happening to youth. One last call here. You got about 30 seconds. Go.
Okay, so real quick, Greg, parental rights matter, first off. Secondly, there's no good definition of LGBTQ. And then also, these kids are being told they're one gender. And I knew someone who was he spoke, and he was a former transgender. And he went through the surgeries and everything, and he had all kinds of complications.
Oh, yeah, and you hear those stories as well. Got to take a break. Appreciate everybody sounding off. Something we'll definitely talk about more of.
From the Fly SPS